Hello and welcome to Colred Plays Raid Shadow Legends. I am Colred. I appreciate you being here. In today's video, I am going to review every single artifact set in Raid Shadow Legends. I think one of the major questions every player has, whether you're a new player or even an experienced player, is what sets should I keep? What pieces should I keep in each set? And how many of those pieces should I hold on to as my artifact storage starts to fill up? So I'm going to try to answer all of those questions for you in today's video. There's a lot of ground to cover, so let's get started. Okay, before we get into the actual sets, I want to talk about the pieces for just a moment. Now, I like to categorize pieces of gear into roughly 5 categories of quality. And the lowest quality piece is a trash piece. Now, what qualifies as a trash piece? Well, generally, it's something where neither the main stat nor any of the substats are usable on that set. It's actually rare to find a total trash piece, especially in the early game. You want to hold on to more pieces than you throw away. But as you progress and your storage starts to fill up with good pieces, the idea of what a trash piece is going to be for you will actually be rising, right? The quality of a trash piece will be higher at the end game than it is in the early game. But very briefly, just remember that the top 3 artifact pieces, the weapon, the helmet, and the shield, all have flat stats as their main stat, and those stats never change. The weapon's always attack, the helmet's always HP, and the shield is always defense. So it's very hard to find a complete trash piece out of one of these 3 pieces because they always have a usable main stat. Now, for the bottom 3 pieces, these main stats are variable. So having a flat attack boot, for instance, is basically an indication that it's probably a trash piece, unless you have some good substat rolls on it. And again, early game, that might be valuable, but as you move into the mid and late game, the judgment about what is a trash piece will rise. And so you will have more trash pieces later on than you will have early in your account. So that's a trash piece. Now, above trash piece, I think of an average piece, an okay piece, a passable piece. And in this category, basically, you're going to have either a usable main stat or you're going to have some usable substats, but you won't have both. So again, if we had a, say, flat defense glove, but it had a good substat, maybe speed or accuracy, you might say, okay, I could potentially use that glove for now. I want to move past that glove eventually, but I can hold on to the piece and maybe use the piece and get some value out of it. So trash is very rarely valuable. Okay pieces will sometimes be valuable depending on the situation. Now, above these 2 categories, we start to get into the good pieces. So the third category of piece I think of as the good tier. And this is anything that has a good main stat and at least one good substat. So you need a combo of main stats and substats. Typically, I might think of high value pieces like crit rate gloves as good regardless of what substats they have, simply because it's really important to get crit rate gloves. Likewise, boots with speed main stat are almost always good, and they're never trash. They're never trash. Unless they're 1-star or something like that. Now, in terms of rarity and stars, those will change the judgment that you make about the piece as you progress through the game. So early on, even common pieces can have value, whereas as you move into the end game, you're going to want to focus on epic and legendary gear primarily. So you're going to have to judge for yourself whether or not the stars and the rarity of the piece suit your account. One good way to judge is just look at the other pieces you have in that set, and then you can decide whether or not this is an average piece or this is actually a good piece or maybe even an excellent piece. So that's the 4th category of gear for me, which is excellent pieces. Now, the difference between excellent pieces and good pieces tends to be based on the roles. So excellent pieces have good main stats and they have good substats, but they roll into those substats at least a little bit. Now, they're not perfect because typically what will happen is you won't get all of the rolls into the thing that you need, or you may in fact hit on a bad substat every once in a while. So for instance, I'll show you a piece here. Okay, these speed gauntlets are an excellent piece. I have crit rate. It is a 6-star epic piece. And I have accuracy and speed, and I rolled a double speed roll. Plus, I've got a bunch of defense here. So this is not a perfect piece, because typically with crit rate, I would want crit damage. I might also want more offensive stats. This could potentially go on a defensive nuker. But the speed is excellent at 18, and getting accuracy in addition to speed can be very helpful. So this is sort of a piece that I know I can get a lot of value out of. But if I were going to design a piece, if I were going to choose my optimal piece, this would not resemble that piece. And then finally, at the highest tier, we have perfect pieces. Now I'm going to show you the difference between that excellent piece and a perfect piece. This 5-star epic chest plate is a perfect piece. At least it was when I rolled it up. Now I would like it to be 6 stars. But again, what quality your gear has is going to be dependent upon what stage of the game you're in. Now, this is a defensive percentage chest plate in the speed set. That's excellent. It has speed as a substat, which is awesome. I've triple rolled into that speed stat, which is phenomenal. And this also has other substats, which are good. This is on my Arbiter. She needs attack. She needs HP. She needs accuracy. None of these are throwaway stats. Throwaway stats for Arbiter might be crit rate or crit damage. But even resistance or defense percentage would be good. Flat stats like this attack stat here keep this piece from being utterly perfect, but I would still say this is basically a perfect piece because her main job is to be fast and to stay alive, and this is a very fast piece that helps her stay alive. So it's perfectly suited to the champion that it goes on. Okay, now let's start reviewing sets. Remember the 5 tiers. There's going to be trash pieces, okay pieces, good pieces, excellent pieces, and perfect pieces. And the reason I want you to know those is because I'm going to talk about what level of piece you should keep for each and every set. So let's go ahead and start with the dungeon sets, and we'll just go in order here. So we'll take the ice golem sets first. Now in each dungeon, you have a list of all of the sets that drop. So we're just going to use that as our list here. Life, offense, and defense sets are all basic sets that are good in the early game, but by mid game, you should already be moving away from. So I would say in the early game, you want to keep pieces in this set that are at least okay or good. You should always throw away trash pieces in these sets. They're just not valuable. As you move into the mid game, you should probably only be keeping excellent or perfect pieces. And in the end game, you may even be throwing out perfect pieces here in these sets. I think it's okay to hold on to life and defense perfect pieces, but I generally trash all of my offense pieces. Even if they're perfect, I just don't use that set at endgame. Crit rate and resistance sets are decent sets. I don't think either one is an endgame set. You probably get more endgame use out of resistance than critical rate, but I do like to keep excellent and perfect pieces of these two sets all the way through into endgame, just in case I need to build out a champion with a little bit more resistance or a little bit more crit rate. In the mid game, you can get a lot of value out of these pieces for specific fights, so definitely hold on to good pieces or better. Retaliation is our first utility set here, and this gives us a 15% chance to counterattack when hit. A utility set is basically a set that focuses on an effect rather than stats. So everything above this gave us stats. These 5 sets all gave us stats, but retaliation gives us no stats. It just gives us this effect. So a 15% chance to counterattack when hit is actually decent. It's a 2-piece set now. This was recently changed. It used to be a 4-piece set with a slightly higher per piece chance to counterattack. But I think this is now a very flexible set. So if you have anybody who has an A1 that brings value, such as maybe the A1 heals, or it provides a provoke, or it lands a debuff of some sort, then you could put them in a retaliation set to round out their gear, and that could be very valuable. I like to keep good or better pieces of this. I think at endgame, you're probably only keeping at least excellent, maybe even just perfect pieces, but you can get a lot of value out of retaliation in a lot of champions, actually more champions than you might think. So I do like to look for good retaliation pieces. Reflex is another utility set that has a 40% chance to reduce a random skill cooldown by 1 turn. You will need a few of these sets, but not a ton of these sets. Early on in the early game and even into the mid game, you're probably not going to use this set at all. But as you enter late game and move on into the end game, you will want a few of these sets. So I would highly recommend holding onto excellent or perfect pieces. Now, Cursed is a rebuilt set as well. Its utility, it provides a 50% chance to place a hex debuff for 2 turns. Now, you don't need a ton of these sets. Kind of like Reflex, you're going to want a few very good sets for specific champions. The hex debuff is helpful in 2 ways, primarily, I think. One is to create more AoE damage, because every target who has a hex debuff on them will take more damage when their allies get hit. But the second reason is for Hydra clan boss. This is a good set for negating the effect of the Mischief Head in Hydra clan boss. So you're going to want this on an AoE attack. Doesn't have to be a damage dealer, probably is going to be a support, but could be a damage dealer. But you're not going to need a ton of these sets. So again, I would probably look for good or better pieces, and as you progress into late game, probably start selling the good pieces and only focus on excellent or perfect pieces. Provoke has a 30% chance to place a provoke debuff for 1 turn. Again, this is good on an AoE attack, but probably you want it on somebody who's naturally tanky. So you don't just want to put this on an AoE damage dealer. This is a form of crowd control. It can be very powerful. It can be very helpful. You're not going to need a ton of these sets. I prefer the stun set over the provoke set, but the provoke set has a higher % chance of landing a provoke. So you may want that for Hydra. You may want it for wave content. But again, because I think the stun set is a little bit more valuable here and you're not going to need too many of these, I would probably only hold on to good pieces or better in the early and mid game, and then graduate to only perfect pieces probably towards the end game. Okay, let's move into our second dungeon. That is the Dragon's Lair. Now at the top, we have 3 of the most powerful sets in the early game: accuracy, speed, and lifesteal. Now, accuracy of these 3 is probably the weakest set. It's not that it's a bad set, it's just that it's been power crept by perception. Perception is so much stronger than accuracy, and you can get it so much more easily that it's basically marginalized accuracy. But accuracy is a very important stat right in the early game on through the end game. So I like to hold on to pieces that are excellent or perfect here, even at end game, just on the off chance I don't have a perception set that fills that gap. But I'm moving away from accuracy. I really don't keep that many pieces because it's so much easier to get perception, and perception is generally stronger. So early game, think about holding on to even average pieces, but as you move through the game, replace it with perception. Speed gives you 12% speed. This is the most important set in the entire game forever. Starting at the early game, right through mid game, into end game. There's never a point where you're going to run out of a need for speed gear. So you want to keep good pieces or better, but you may even hold on to like average or even trash pieces depending on the particular piece. So for instance, if you have a trash gauntlet, but you might need to hold on to that because it's the only gauntlet you have that could complete a speed set, you would actually hold on to that trash gauntlet. I have had cases in the early game and even in the mid game where the only way to complete a speed set was to throw like flat HP gloves with no good substats onto a champion. But because that still completes the set and gives me an additional 12 speed or 13 speed or 14 speed, it's worth it to hold on to those for a little while. As you collect speed sets, you will graduate towards only holding on to good pieces or better. But until the very end game, you're probably still going to hold on to good pieces. You're going to go hold on to rares that have maybe like speed and accuracy or speed and resistance or something in the substats. So you're going to have a lot of this gear. You're going to need a lot of this gear, and you're going to want to hold on to most of it for a long time. Now, Lifesteal is a utility set. It heals you by 30% of the damage dealt. This is an incredibly valuable set early in the game. And as you move into mid game, you're going to start moving away from it. It still has some value in mid game. You're going to put this on a lot of damage dealers. And I would say you want to hold on to average pieces or better in the early game, and then graduate to good pieces or better in the mid game. But by the time you get to the late game, you're not going to need lifesteal very much, and you would only hold on to probably perfect pieces. The Destroy set destroys enemy max HP by 40% of the damage dealt. This is one of the worst sets in the game because destroying max HP is very rarely valuable. There are 2 primary uses for this set. One is the Scarab boss in Doom Tower has a mechanic where you want to destroy his max HP in order to kill him more easily. But it's really about convenience. It's not even necessary. You can still win the fight without destroying his max HP. But having 1 or 2 sets of destroy might help you speed up Scarab boss. So if you want to farm Scarab boss, I would recommend holding on to perfect pieces in the destroy set. The second use is you can potentially get some value out of this set in Arena, especially against very tanky teams that maybe have regeneration sets or passive heals. So by destroying their max HP, you destroy their regeneration capabilities in terms of keeping them alive, right? You just reduce their overall health pool, and so their heals don't matter as much. But both of those are niche cases. I would say you only want to keep perfect pieces in the destroy set, and you only need maybe 2 or 3 sets maximum ever. So I primarily just throw these pieces away. The toxic set is a decent set. It has a 75% chance of placing the smaller poison debuff for 2 turns. This is a really nice way, especially in early and mid game, to get extra damage onto a clan boss team. So you can put this on any champion that reaches the speed and the stats that you need them to. In order to make this a valuable set, though, you do need to reach those stats. So as a result, you can't really keep bad toxic pieces. So I would say even in the early game, you're going to want to keep at least average pieces or better. And by the mid game, you're probably going to be looking only to keep excellent pieces or perfect pieces. The Frost set is a 4-piece set that has a 20% chance to place a freeze debuff for 1 turn on the attacker when you're attacked. Now, this doesn't require accuracy, which is nice. It can't be resisted, so that's nice. So it's just a flat 20% chance to provide ACC. This has some niche use cases, but I would say in general, it's not a particularly popular set. You're not going to use a lot. You're going to get a lot of these pieces because you're going to farm Dragon's Lair a lot. So you're going to have the opportunity to only keep excellent or perfect pieces. In fact, even by mid game, I would say you only want to be holding on to pretty much perfect pieces. And you might use 2 or maybe 3 of these sets ever. So don't feel like you have to hold on to a lot of these pieces. Daze is also one of the worst sets in the game. I think the sleep debuff is pretty awful. But if you really are desperate for some CC or you want a Daze set for the Sand Devil's Necropolis, there are a few use cases. So I think much like Frost, you probably won't need more than maybe 2 of these sets ever. And you're only going to want to keep excellent or perfect pieces and then pretty quickly graduate to only perfect pieces. The Avenging set is a 45% chance to counterattack when a debuff is placed on the wearer. I think that this set is a little bit underrated. There are a lot of places where you get debuffs and counterattacks can be very strong. However, I think there are other sets that provide better overall utility, and potentially like you could use a retaliation set and that would be not as good as an avenging set in terms of the percentage chance of counterattack. But remember that this only happens when you get debuffed, whereas the retaliation set happens anytime you're hit, and you're more likely to get hit and debuffed simultaneously than just debuffed. So I think that this set is okay, but you're probably not going to need more than 1 or 2 sets of this. And again, I would focus primarily on perfect pieces because if you're going to get value out of this set, you're going to need the stats on the set to make it worthwhile. Now, the Stalwart set is an excellent set here. It provides a 30% damage reduction from all enemy AoE attacks. This is a really good way to keep a tank alive, especially like an ally protect tank alive in clan boss. Because you're taking so much damage from the AoEs as an ally protector, having this damage mitigation can be very important to just keeping you alive. So I actually think this is a very good set. You're going to want it on your tanks. You're going to want it on a couple of different supports. And you probably won't need a ton of Stalwart gear, but the better the Stalwart gear that you have, the better off you are in the long run. So I would definitely start by keeping good pieces or better, and then I would move towards excellent pieces. And I would probably always keep at least some excellent pieces or perfect pieces until you've gotten your Stalwart champions geared up, and then you don't need so many of these sets. Okay, we're in the final dungeon, Fire Knight's Castle. I'm going as fast as I can. There are a lot of sets here. So let's start with Fury. Fury is an okay set. It does more damage the lower your health is. This is not a great set for increasing damage. There are better sets for increasing damage, but there are a few champions in the game who have a mechanic where they're already doing more damage when they have lower health. So think like Leorius the Proud. So Fury could give you extra value on a champion like that. But I would say maybe maximum you need 2 of these sets ever. And likely you're going to go in other directions. You're going to go with like a Savage set or something like that. So you can feel pretty comfortable throwing away every single piece of Fury. But if you want to experiment with this set, it can be fun to mess around with. So I would suggest keeping at least excellent or perfect pieces and don't stockpile too many of these things. Curing set is actually not a great set. Early in the game, I always thought this was a great set. I was like, I want to put this on all of my healers. So it gives you 20% additional heal. Basically, any heal is improved by 20%. This also restores the amount of destroyed HP equal to bonus healing. If you need a way to restore destroyed HP in Hydra boss or somewhere else, this is a set that can help you do that. Otherwise, I generally avoid this set. I do keep perfect pieces just on the off chance that I have a healer who could really benefit from this in a particular fight. So it's not an utterly trashy set. Like, you can use curing on occasion, but you're going to find that you only need a few sets. So I would keep only excellent or perfect pieces. Now, immunity is a good set. It has a niche use. So you're probably going to want maybe 3 or 4 of these sets on your account in their entirety. So I would keep only excellent sets or better, excellent pieces or better. And then you probably graduate to only perfect pieces later on. Shield set is actually a highly valuable set that can be used in a lot of different places. You can put it on tanks. You can put it on support. You can use it on Faction Wars champions quite a bit. You probably always want a shield set on at least one of your Faction Wars champions until you get more powerful and you don't need them anymore. So I would recommend keeping even average pieces in the early game and then graduating towards good pieces in the mid game. And then in the late game, you're probably going to only need to keep excellent or perfect pieces because there are other shield sets. There's the bolster set that are even better and upgrades from this. So at end game, you might not use a lot of shield, but up through at least the late mid game, you're probably going to get a lot of value out of several shield sets. And again, in faction crypts, you might always want some shield sets. So you're going to need more of these than a lot of the other sets on this particular list. So don't hesitate to keep, even some average pieces until you graduate to good pieces or better based on, time collecting these sets. Crit damage set is the first upgrade to the offense set for your damage dealers. Remember that crit damage from this set applies to all sorts of damage dealers. So it doesn't matter if it's a defensive based damage dealer or an HP based damage dealer. Crit damage still applies, whereas the attack that you get from an offense set only works for attack-based champions. So this is a bit more versatile than those sets, and it also just provides more damage. As a 2-piece set, this is a nice set to flesh out. You can add this to a Savage set, or you can add this to Cruel Gear, or even whatever other sets that you have, maybe Speed or Perception, depending on what you need, to get an extra 20% damage, which is pretty nice. It's not an end game set, but it definitely is a very good mid-game damage dealer set, so don't hesitate to put this on your nukers, whether that is a nuker for the arena, a nuker for PvE wave content, or even on your clan boss damage dealer. I would probably start off by keeping average pieces or better, and then graduate eventually to only keeping excellent pieces or better. Frenzy is a fairly trash set, 5% turn meter for each debuff received. However, there are a few niche cases where this can be very useful, specifically in arena. So you could have maybe 2 or 3 of these sets on your account by end game, but you don't have to. You could actually never have a frenzy set. I think I have no frenzy sets and you could do quite well. But there are some opportunities to use frenzy sets in specific cases for specific champions. So I would focus on excellent or perfect pieces, and I probably wouldn't worry about them at all in early or mid game. So it's not really until late game you're even going to get any value out of this. So this isn't a set you have to worry about early game. Just go ahead and trash all the pieces. Regeneration is a god tier set. This is one of the best sets in the game. So early on, you want to get as much regeneration as you can. Really, you don't need to necessarily put them on a lot of champions, but they can be very helpful on certain champions, usually supports or tanks in different situations. So I would hold on even to trash pieces early on, and then slowly graduate from trash to average pieces to good pieces. And then even at end game, I'll keep excellent pieces here. There are improved regeneration sets. There are other ways to get regeneration, but I never run out of a need for good regeneration sets. So hold on to it early, hold on to it mid game, hold on to it late, but just sort of graduate towards better pieces as your collection grows. Stun set is a highly valuable set. Anybody who has an AoE, especially on their A1, can get a lot of value out of stun set. This set helps with wave content and controlling waves, so this can be useful in faction crypts, it can be useful in Doom Tower, it can even be useful in dungeons that have waves before the boss. You can also get some value out of this in Arena. So you're going to want some stun sets, maybe not as many as some other sets like Perception, we'll get to that, or Regeneration like we just talked about, but you're still going to want some stun sets. So hold on to even trash pieces at first and then slowly graduate up through the levels as your collection grows. At endgame, I'm still holding on to excellent pieces and perfect pieces. Savage is another god tier set. This is one of the most damaging sets in the game. It ignores 25% of enemies' defense. Now, early on, you probably won't need Savage, and putting Savage on champions in the early game or even early mid game is not as advisable as saying going for extra crit damage or even, extra crit rate potentially. So this is sort of a mid game or later set. You're going to want a lot of it. Every damage dealer that you have, for the most part, is going to be wearing Savage or something better or something comparable. Start by collecting every piece that you can, so even trash pieces, and then slowly graduate up. And in the end game, I will even sometimes hold on to good pieces that are kind of missing in my collection. So if I am missing, say, weapons, in the Savage, I don't have as many weapons as I have all the other pieces. I'll hold on to good weapons for a while, just in the off chance I need to build another nuker with a Savage set. But generally a very good set to hold on to a lot of pieces for. Don't get into the bad habit of holding on to too many pieces in good sets. I want to just mention that here. It is possible that you'll hold on to like 200 Savage set pieces, but realistically, you're only ever going to have maybe 8 or 10 nukers, so you're not going to need 200 pieces. So when you get into that point, start rolling up the Savage gear that you have and seeing which roll into good substats. And if they don't roll into the right substats, just go ahead and sell them, and then you can slowly improve your collection that way. Okay, so we are done with the dungeon sets, but we have a lot more sets to cover. One of the sets that I want to cover right now is a set that you may not even know exists. If you go into your clan shop, there is an artifact set here at the end, which is called Killstroke. Now, Killstroke artifacts increase crit damage by 20% and speed by 5%. So they are a slight upgrade from the crit damage set. However, unfortunately, your clan needs to be level 17 to even unlock these artifacts. And by the time your clan is 17, you will probably have moved past the need for these artifacts. You're not going to collect them unless you deliberately go out there and get them. So by the time you're there, you can decide whether or not they're valuable to you. I have very few Killstroke artifacts and I barely ever use them. So I would say this is not a high value target. But again, if you do collect it, you're going to be looking primarily for excellent or even perfect pieces, because at endgame, anything less than a perfect piece doesn't make a whole lot of sense to hold on to. Okay, so now I want to talk about the sets that you can get only from special drops. And so the first of those sets is Relentless. Now, Relentless gives you an 18% chance of getting an extra turn, and this is an incredibly powerful set. This is another god tier set. So you're not going to get a lot of these pieces. You have to place high in tournaments in order to get these pieces, but you should collect some over time. So at first, what I would say is hold on to even the trash pieces, because you never know what piece you're going to need in order to complete a set of Relentless gear. It is a 4-piece set. But as you collect more pieces, you can get rid of the trash pieces, and eventually you can get rid of sort of the average or okay pieces. I never get rid of good Relentless gear. You can see I have dozens of pieces that I haven't used yet, but it just takes one build idea, one team composition, or one new champion for me to go, hey, I want Relentless on that champion, and therefore I want to have as many pieces available to see how I can rearrange that build. I should probably move towards getting rid of my average pieces and my good pieces and just holding on to excellent and perfect pieces, but in reality, I don't have that many perfect pieces, so I'd probably be losing half my pieces here. But yeah, I do think that this is incredibly valuable in the early game, in the mid game, and even at end game. So there's never a point where you just want to start trashing this unless you really have all the Relentless that you need, or you've rolled up a bunch of pieces. Let's say you have, 5 or 6 weapons, they've all rolled up and they've rolled well. Now you can start throwing away the other weapons that don't match that. Okay, now there are 2 sets that you get from Clan Boss. Those are Cruel and Immortal. The Cruel set gives you 15% attack and ignores 5% of enemies' defense. And this is a good set, and I think that the power of this set stays pretty consistent. So it is good at early game, it is good at mid game, and it is good at the end game, because ignoring enemy defense is always good. So you can add this to a damage dealer who's already using Savage, and you can get 30% of ignored defense at that point, 25% from the Savage, and 5% from the Cruel. In addition, you get 15% attack. So this is really a set that's best suited for attack-based damage dealers. And I probably wouldn't use it on my defense-based damage dealers or HP-based damage dealers. Even to get that extra ignore defense, I'd probably go somewhere else. At this point in the game, I try to hold on to only perfect pieces, because you get a lot of these basically every day. If you're clearing all your clan boss chests, you're going to get pieces. So I try to hold on now to only 6-star pieces that are really excellent or perfect. And generally, I trash every 5-star piece. You get so much of this set that you're going to be able to start doing that relatively early in your account. So yeah, it's a good set to use. And early game, you might even hold on to average pieces just to make sure that you can always have the piece that you need, because this is sort of a filler set. But eventually you're going to graduate to getting rid of even the good pieces, maybe even the excellent pieces, and only holding on to the perfect pieces. The same is true for Immortal gear. Immortal is the other set you get from Clan Boss, but I would say this has maybe more uses than the Cruel set. Cruel set primarily goes on attack-based damage dealers, whereas the Immortal set can go on almost anybody that you want it to who needs a little bit of additional sustain. You get 15% HP, which is useful everywhere, as opposed to 15% attack, which is only good on some champions. And then you get a heal of 3% of your max HP every turn. So right at the beginning of the game, I hold on to even trash pieces in this set. And as I move towards mid game, I'll get rid of the trash pieces and the okay pieces. And I'll hold on to good pieces for a long time. I'm now at the point where I'm holding on to only excellent pieces, but you'll notice I do have some 5-star pieces here. I even have some common pieces here. So I allow myself to hold on to more Immortal pieces than Cruel pieces because of the extra utility. I'm probably still holding on to too many here. You can see I have quite a bit. But I think at endgame, excellent pieces for Immortal sets totally make sense to hold on to because you use so many of them. Now we can talk about the 4 Divine sets. So we have Divine Offense, which is the exact same as Offense, except it provides a 15% HP self-shield. It's a self-shield only, and the same is true for all of the Divine sets. They are all the exact same as the normal set. So Offense is like the Offense set, Divine Crit Rate is like the Crit Rate set, Divine Life is like the Life set, and Divine Speed is like the Speed set. And these are only slightly better than their regular versions. So the Offense set is probably the worst here. I would say, I don't hold on to these pieces very often at all. I don't even know why I hold on to any of the pieces because I generally don't use this set. But since it's slightly better than Offense, I would say you can hold on to them slightly more than you would hold on to the Offense set. Same thing with Crit Rate and Life. I do think Divine Speed is a very good set. Obviously, the Speed set is a God tier set, and we need a ton of that. So I hold on to a ton of Divine Speed. This is sort of the one exception to the Divine sets. This is a really, really good set. I hold on to even good pieces right now, even though I'm at endgame. So I'll hold on to 5-star pieces that are good, excellent, or perfect. I will probably eventually graduate to only holding on to excellent or perfect pieces. But this is a set that I'm always looking for. In fact, when I'm looking for speed on a champion, I might even look at Divine Speed before I look at speed sets, simply because having that extra HP self-shield can be valuable in a lot of cases. Think about having that extra shield if you want a Mischief tank for Hydra Clan Boss. Think about that self-shield going up against the Scarab Boss. It gives you a free shield for 3 turns at the beginning of that fight. You can also think about it on anybody you want just a little bit of extra survivability on. And again, even if you don't care about the self-shield, it's still a speed set. So hold on to it. Okay, so now there are the 2 sets that you can get from the Hydra Clan Boss. Let me just move myself out of the way here quickly. So we have Protection and Stone Skin. Now the reason I had to move myself is because these sets are unique and they have bonuses that they give for each and every piece. So you don't need a 2-piece set or a 4-piece set. You can actually get individual bonuses for each piece. So those are listed here. So as you can see, Protection gives you resistance, HP, speed, And then the special buff, which is 25% chance to place a protected buff, that increases to 50% chance at 6 pieces. A protected buff means it can't be removed. It can't be stripped or have its duration reduced by an enemy skill. So this is a very powerful potential buff. In addition, as you can see, you can even get accessories in the protection set that would add to your total. Now, you don't need accessories just to add this, the 7-piece, 8-piece, and 9-piece set bonus, I don't think. So for instance, if you had 1 piece of protection artifact set, like gear set, and then you had 1 piece of protection accessories, you would have the 2-piece set bonus. I haven't actually done that, but I assume that that's how it works. And so you can see here, you can actually get quite a bit of speed. You can get 32% speed, which is actually almost as good as 3 sets of speed gear. Plus, you get all of these additional bonuses, extra HP, extra resistance, and then the chance of the protected buff. That chance actually goes up to even 75% chance when you have 9 pieces, and allies deal 5% more damage per each buff placed by the wearer. So if you have a great buff champion, you can consider putting them in protection for this specific reason. Remember, buff champions often have to go early in the turn order, so that's why all this speed is there. And then you have those protected buffs and that extra damage buff. So this is a great set. This is a god tier set. Primarily goes on buff champions or maybe on any kind of support champions that require speed, HP, and resist. Even if they don't put a lot of buffs out there, I could think of like champions that put out, say, continuous heals and maybe have an increased defense or a cleanse or something like that. That would be a good champion to put this gear on. Like most other special sets, I try to keep even trash pieces early on in the early game. You're not going to get into Hydra in the early game. So when you first start collecting these pieces from Hydra, you're going to want to keep even the trash pieces. But as you collect more and more, you can start moving towards just keeping maybe the average pieces, then eventually just keeping the good pieces or better. Here at Endgame, I try to keep good, excellent, and perfect pieces, but you can see I have so much of protection gear. I have started recently to clear out the good pieces and just keep the excellent and perfect pieces. Now, the second Hydra set is Stone Skin. Now, Stone Skin, like protection set, has 9 individual set bonuses. And you can see these are focused more around defense and survivability, so HP, defense, and resistance. In addition, this gives a Stone Skin buff at the start of the round for 1 turn, or 2 turns if it's if you have the 6-piece set bonus, or even get a better shield at 9 pieces. So it's still for 2 turns, I believe, but it becomes even stronger. So this shield is an addition to like any regular shield, like an HP based shield. And this is just a damage reduction shield. It's very hard to chew through. So it creates a lot of extra survivability. It also has that 50% chance of blocking removals or steals. So it protects your buffs at 50%. Stone Skin gets used a lot, primarily in Arena. You can put it on any champion in Arena who you just want to keep alive against a go first team. So this is great stuff for any champion who's either a reviver or a tank or even your nuker. You could use this on a nuker who you want to make sure is going to get a chance to go. You can use a ton of this stuff in Arena. So if you're a PvP player, there's almost no limit to the number of Stone Skin sets you're going to want. So again, like other special sets, keep even the trash pieces early on. And as you progress, you're going to probably eventually even want to get rid of the good pieces, but that's going to be a long way away. Okay, so now we move on to the Forge sets. We're almost done. This is the last area we need to cover. So the first 4 sets are the sets that you can get from materials farmed in faction crypts: Swift Parry, Deflection, Resilience, and Perception. Now, Resilience and Perception only require forged materials from faction crypts, whereas both Swift Parry and Deflection also require these core hammers. You're not going to get that many core hammers over the course of your account. You will collect them very slowly. You'll get them from certain places, usually rewards from events and tournaments. If we start at the top, Swift Parry is a very good set. It's 18 speed, 18% speed, and 30% crit damage, with a 50% chance of unkillable when hit with a fatal hit. And this is a 4-piece set. So this is a very good set for an arena nuker primarily. You could put it on a PvE nuker as well. You want that extra crit damage. If you need that extra speed, it's great. If you don't need the speed or you don't want the speed, you can definitely get more damage out of different sets. You could go with just 2 sets of crit damage, which would give you 40% crit damage instead of 30% crit damage. But this gives you extra speed and extra survivability in case you don't win the speed race in arena, or in case you just want to give yourself a little bit of an insurance policy that your nuker won't die. In the early game, you may not be able to get a lot of this, but I would potentially hold on to even trash pieces just to make sure you could complete the 4-piece set. And then as you progress through the game, move towards getting rid of the trash and average pieces. And then eventually at endgame, you'll probably only be holding on to excellent pieces or better. But because you don't get a ton of this, it's reasonable to hold on to some good pieces, even at endgame, just to make sure you can complete the set. Deflection is an okay set. I don't think it's as good as the other sets here. You'll notice that this is very similar to the Resilience set. Now, the Resilience set is a 2-piece set that gives you 10% HP and 10% defense. And Deflection is a 4-piece set that gives you 20% HP and 20% defense. So it's exactly the same as doubling up the Resilience set, except you get this additional 25% chance to deflect 1 debuff onto the attacker. So this can be an okay set. If you need HP and defense on a champion, this is better than 2 Resilience sets, right? However, I would primarily save my core hammers for swift parries. I wouldn't use them on deflection sets. There is one exception. You have a chance to deflect bombs back onto Bommel. So if you are really struggling with Bommel, maybe having 1 or 2 deflection sets could help you. And so that is a consideration. But I almost never use this set. If I did use this set, I would hold on to any pieces I could to complete the set. So even trash pieces might be something I held on to. And then if I invested more in the set, I'd eventually graduate up. But you're not going to need a lot of this set. And so just keep the pieces you need. Try to use as few core hammers here as possible. And so even keep the trash pieces or average pieces if you're going to use the set. The Resilience set is one of the 2 sets, along with Perception, that you're going to have the most of, because it only takes materials you get from faction crypts. You can farm so many of those materials. You can see I have so many thousands of these materials. I almost can't forge these fast enough. I run out of silver bars before I run out of the rare materials. So what I would say here is you don't need to keep the lower quality pieces because you're going to get so many of these. It behooves you to just hold on to excellent and perfect pieces. Early game, you might hold on to average and good pieces for a little while, but you're going to quickly graduate to getting rid of the average pieces. And then by mid game, probably you're going to get rid of the good pieces as well, unless it's in a slot that you don't have a lot of. Again, like if you need speed boots and you only have a couple of good speed boots, you might hold on to those because you don't have any excellent or perfect pieces available. I think this is an underrated set. I think it's a highly useful set. And this is actually a great set to fill in on any champion where you would otherwise have a broken set. So let's say you're going for a damage dealer and you're putting a savage set on that damage dealer. You could consider filling the other 2 spots with excellent or perfect resilience gear. So I like to keep every kind of good resilience piece. And what I mean by that is, like, you might think the set, okay, it's based around HP and defense, so you should primarily keep like tanky pieces. But I actually like damage dealing pieces in this set. So crit damage gloves, crit rate gloves, attack percentage boots, attack percentage chest. I'll keep all of those as well because I'm going to get a ton of them. And so I can keep excellent and perfect pieces like that. And then I can fill in the gearing on champions that are maybe damage dealers that don't have other good options. Besides, a little bit of tankiness on your damage dealers can also go a long way. Okay, now we have the Perception set. This gives us 40 accuracy and 5% speed. This is probably the most valuable set in the entire game in terms of the number of champions that you will put this on. A lot of champions need accuracy. Almost everybody needs speed. So next to the speed set, this is probably the most valuable set in the entire game. You will get so many pieces of perception gear that you will be able to get rid of your trash and average pieces relatively early in the game, but you're going to hold on to even good perception through the mid game and into the late game. Eventually at end game, I primarily hold on to only excellent and perfect pieces, but occasionally I will even hold on to a good piece that fits a particular spot. So whether those are speed boots or crit damage gloves with crit rate substat or something like that, I will hold on to those good pieces as well, and I'll quickly find a use for them because I'm putting Perception on champions every day. Affinity Breaker is an okay set. It has 30% crit damage and a 50% chance to change a weak hit to a critical hit. This is not a great damage dealing set. Even 2 crit damage sets would give you 40% crit damage, which is more than what you're getting here from Affinity Breaker. I think they need to buff this set to be at least 40% crit damage before it's really going to be a viable set. Now, I started by saying it's an okay set, and I think it is because there are times when you would want to change a weak hit to not a weak hit. Think about it this way. If you have an incredibly important debuff to land and you can eliminate weak hits 50% of the time, that's pretty good. That means instead of weak hitting 30% of the time or 35% of the time, you're going to weak hit 17.5% of the time. So that's going to land a lot more debuffs. So sometimes this can be good on a damage dealer who also has an important debuff to land. So maybe somebody like a Feign, but again, you're still going to have to reach your accuracy levels to land those debuffs. So this can be a little bit of a tricky set to use. I would say in the early game, you're never going to have these, so you don't have to worry about it. And the only time you're really going to want to forge these is in the late or end game. And you should probably only be keeping excellent or perfect pieces because you're going to need all of those stats in order to make this set worth. Untouchable is a straight up improvement or upgrade to the immunity set. You don't want to think of this as an improvement to the resistance set. It's not. It's an improvement to the immunity set. Remember, the immunity set is a 4-piece set. So this gives you the same immunity as the immunity set, but now you get additional resist. So you're not going to need a ton of this, but if you do need it, you're probably going to want excellent or perfect pieces. And it's probably a late or end game set for the most part. You're going to want this on a cleanser, or you're going to want this on a buff champion or a reviver, somebody that you can't afford to be CC'd or debuffed. But you're not going to need too many of these sets. Fatal is an okay set. It gives you additional crit rate in plus the attack that an offense set gives you. I don't think it's a significant upgrade from an offense set. In the early game, having 4-star and 5-star pieces in this set might be helpful in order to get your damage dealers to 100% crit rate. So in early game, I would say you could hold on to even average pieces here. But as you graduate to the mid game and you actually start to get more opportunities to collect these pieces, you're going to find that they're actually less valuable at mid game anyway. So I would think by the time you get to end game, you can just entirely sell this set. You might hold on to a few perfect pieces, but you probably don't even need perfect pieces. I sell all of my offense pieces. I sell pretty much all of my fatal pieces. Frostbite is not a particularly popular set. I think it needs a buff in order to be valuable. If you are going with a frost set, you could potentially supplement that with a 2-piece frostbite set to give even more chance of landing your debuff against attackers. Maybe if you really needed some way to block a freeze debuff, you could go with this. But realistically, why wouldn't you go with an immunity set or a resistance set or some other set, or just bring a cleanser or, a block debuffs? So this doesn't provide a lot of utility over what you can get elsewhere. So I think this is a pretty bad set. And I likely wouldn't ever even use it. I would just sell all of the pieces. But if you're going to use this, I would say you'd probably want at least excellent, if not perfect pieces. Otherwise, what's the point? Now, Bloodthirst is another one of these sets that I'm a little bit irritated at Plarium for because it's a good set. Crit rate of 12%, plus 30% heal of the damage dealt. So it's an upgrade to the Lifesteal set. But we know that Lifesteal is an early and mid-game set, and you can't really get the good Bloodthirst pieces until you are in the late game and farming the hard mode of Doom Tower. So you might be able to get some 5-star pieces in the mid game that could give you an upgrade from your lifesteal sets. But lifesteal sets are so much easier to get that generally, if you need lifesteal, that's the way that you're going to go. So at the end game, the only kinds of pieces I would hold on to here would be absolutely perfect pieces for the rare champions that a lifesteal set would really help at end game. There aren't that many of them, so you don't have to keep that many of these pieces. Guardian set is a god tier set. It is one of the absolute best sets in the game. Not only is it a regeneration set, so it heals you by 10% every turn, but in addition to that, the wearer of this set absorbs 10% of all damage dealt to allied champions. So it's like a mini ally protect combined with a regeneration set. Great set. You're going to want multiples of these sets. They're going to go on your tanks, on your the most survivable champions that you have. and you can add that additional, not just self-survival, but survival for your whole team. So you're going to use it in Clan Boss, you're going to use it in Hydra, you're going to use it in Doom Tower. So once you start collecting this set, I would say you're probably going to want to keep even trash pieces so you can potentially complete a 4-piece set. But as you progress into the game, you're going to get rid of the trash pieces and the average pieces and probably hold on to the good pieces or better. You might even be holding on to the average pieces or better for a long time. So you're going to need to forge hundreds of these pieces before you start to even get rid of the average pieces. But eventually you probably graduate to good pieces or better. You'd have to be very, very late game. Like you'd have to be in the game maybe 3+ years to be getting rid of even the good pieces in the Guardian set because it's such a valuable set. And maybe if you could see, I have tons of materials here. I actually have been farming this for quite a bit. So I need to go ahead and make a bunch of Guardian gear. And maybe then I can start clearing out some of my good pieces. Fantastic set. Get as much as you can. Now, Fortitude is the actual upgrade to the Resist set. So Resistance, this is not the upgrade to the Immunity set. Remember, Resistance is a 2-piece set. Immunity is a 4-piece set. And this is the improved Resistance set. Just gives you an additional 10% defense. It's a solid set. And if you need a survivable cleanser, this is going to help that. You know, you put Resistance typically on cleansers or on champions who really can't afford to be CC'd. And defense would support that idea that you want to keep this champion alive. So I think that you can start to get these relatively, you know, in the mid game, again, just like all of these other sets in Doom Tower. But if you can get some 4-star pieces or 5-star pieces of this gear in the early mid game, you could use this on a cleanser, on a healer, on a reviver, maybe even on a buffer or a debuffer. But you're not going to need a ton of this gear. So you'll probably start by keeping maybe the average pieces or better, and then you'll quickly graduate to keeping only excellent or perfect pieces. And then at end game, you'll only keep perfect pieces. Okay, Lethal is actually maybe the best damage dealing set in the game. This is an upgraded Savage set, so it's a phenomenal god tier set. It basically gives you the Savage bonus of 25% of ignoring enemy defense, but then it adds 10% crit rate. So it's going to allow you to get to your crit rate cap more quickly. It is only 10% additional crit rate on the entire set, but that's going to alleviate the need for having crit rate gloves a little bit more. So it's going to allow you to transition to crit damage gloves and still reach that 100% crit rate cap if you need it, or the 70% or wherever that particular champ needs to get to. So absolutely god tier, one of the best sets in the entire game. You're probably going to keep even trash pieces early on, just like with Savage set. And then you're going to slowly progress as you get towards endgame to probably keeping good or better. But absolutely great set. Farm it as early as you can and start putting it on your damage dealers. Okay, now finally we get to the 4 sets that are available only from the Forge Pass. And these are all very good sets. Instinct is a speed of 12% and ignores 20% of enemy defense. So this is not as good as Savage maybe or Lethal. But there are times where you need a little bit more speed on your damage dealer. So giving up 5% of ignore defense for an additional 12% speed can be worth it. It's hard to say exactly where this falls in terms of top tier damage dealing sets, but it's close to the top. So it's probably Lethal, then Savage, then Instinct. And they're all relatively close. So absolutely outstanding set. And again, I think early on you'd keep even trash pieces, but you'd slowly graduate towards keeping only good pieces or better. Even at the end game, you're probably going to hold on to the good pieces here, unless you're a spender and you have a lot of access to these materials. These are so rare that you're going to need to keep a whole bunch of pieces just to make sure you can complete the 4-piece sets when you need to. Bolster is another upgrade to regeneration. It's regeneration and shield all in one. Plus it's a protected allied shield. This is a phenomenal god tier set. And I would absolutely hold on to as many of these pieces as you could. So even hold on to the trash pieces just to make sure you can complete the set, and then slowly progress towards getting rid of the trash and average pieces. But I would say even good pieces will probably be there for you at endgame, and you're going to want as many of these sets as you can get. That protected ally shield is very valuable in Arena. It's also really valuable in wave-based content, so Faction Crypts and Doom Tower. And then the regeneration, just make sure that the person who's got the shield for everybody else is also benefiting from regeneration. And when you think about it, you're always going to put this set on a champion that has a really high HP pool. And the heals of 10% are going to be big on a big HP pool. And the shield is going to be big on a champion with a big HP pool. So the synergy from this set is absolutely beautiful. Maybe the best tanky set in the entire game. Defiant is an excellent set as well. This is another god tier set. This is an upgrade from Stalwart. So Stalwart is a 4-piece set that gives you 30% damage reduction from AoEs. Defiant is a 2-piece set that gives you 10% defense and 15% damage reduction from AoEs. So you can add one of these 2-piece sets to a 4-piece Stalwart and get 45% damage reduction plus 10% defense. Or if you can find 3 sets of Defiant that work well together, you can get an extra 30% defense plus 45% damage reduction from AoE attacks. Incredibly valuable for those champions that you need to keep alive, especially your ally protectors. So again, hold on to even trash pieces, and then slowly as you progress towards endgame, maybe get rid of the trash and average pieces. But you're going to hold on to a lot of these pieces forever. And the final set here is the Righteous set. This is a very good set. I don't think this is a god tier set, but this is a really nice mixture of speed and resist. So when you think about the fact that a 2-piece speed set gives you 12% speed bonus, and this gives you 10% speed bonus, plus an additional 40% resist, this is basically a speed set with a resist set combined. So very, very good set. I would say if you're looking for every drop of speed you can get, you'd probably still go for the speed set over this. But there are going to be opportunities for champions to use the Righteous set, and it's going to be so strong on your cleansers, on your debuffers, on your buffers, on your tanks, on anybody who needs that extra resist. So it's going to be valuable in high-end Doom Tower. It's going to be valuable in high-end Arena. Yeah, this is a great set, just below God tier maybe. But if you wanted to argue that it's a God tier set, I would say, okay, I concede that point. But, to me, I think that still, when you need speed, you usually need every drop of it. So I typically think of this as slightly less good than a speed set. But you can make your own call. I would definitely hold on to even trash pieces here at first to make sure I could complete the sets that I need. It is only a 2-piece set, so you can quickly probably graduate to holding on to only average or better. At endgame, I would probably be holding on to only excellent and perfect pieces, because even though this is a hard set to get, it is a 2-piece set, so I probably don't need to hold on to too many of those good pieces at endgame. Okay, finally, we are done. That is every artifact set in the game. I will leave accessories for their own video. I hope you found this video helpful. If you have, please click the like button and also consider subscribing to the channel. And if you like, join our Discord community. That is it for me today. If you have any questions about gear, please put them in the comments below. Otherwise, have a great one, and I will see you in another video very soon.